Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting in just a second. I had to quickly run an Ethernet cable because I realized it wasn't plugged in. But we're all good now. At least I think we are. Because before I was broadcasting at 180p and I was like, why? But now it's just working.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's not good at all. All right, let me mute that. Let me throw down.
Oh, I got to do sound
volume
thing. Sound recorder. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. That
Yeah,
sounds
let me
about
turn down
right.
my broadcast strength. So it's not as muffled. Do we sound okay? Am I loud? I did turn up the gain this time, so it should be a little bit louder.
Good morning, Raphael, in the chat, if he's still here. All right, I'm ready to start when you are.
Yep. I am now recording.
I'm now recording.
3, 2, 1, clap. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 366 for May 8th, 2025. Hey everyone, Dino Rubino here, joined with Zac Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast. This week, well, they finally did it. Microsoft announced new Surface devices, the very ones that Zac told us about months ago. We'll go over those, including the new Surface Pro 12-inch, as well as the Surface Laptop 13-inch. And I do have the Pro 12-inch right next to me. And we'll quickly talk about them, what we like, what we don't like, what the prospects for these devices look like. And then we're going to shift to Qualcomm. They just launched some new ads that will be appearing on TV that go after Intel. Some of them are a little unfair, but I'll explain what they're talking about. They're pretty funny. It's a big move by Qualcomm to do this, so it's kind of interesting. We'll also go through new Windows 11 features announced. So besides these new devices, Microsoft has also announced new stuff coming to Windows 11, specifically a lot of things coming to the Copilot Plus feature set, and including things to like Click to Do, which I'm going to go on record in saying between Click to Do and Phone Link, these are two of, I think, one of the biggest, most important apps that Microsoft has created on Windows 11 in recent times, as well as boosting up Snipping Tool and Microsoft Paint and Photos, actually, for that matter. Then we'll shift over to the Xbox ROG Ally. So this is the rumored first attempt at a Xbox handheld. It's not the real Xbox handheld. It's almost like a placeholder, but it has made an appearance at the FCC, so we'll kind of go over that. And then finally, we'll wrap up with this funny Salesforce story with its CEO, with Mark Benioff going after Microsoft again, and some of his opinions, which are kind of funny. Oh man, for some reason, this happened last time too. My sound recorder is not recording.
Mine looked like. Have you just not started it, or is it going but you can't see any audio?
It's going, but I don't see any audio.
Yeah, mine's doing the same. Let's just assume it is recording and the visual isn't working. We'll go with that. And if we haven't captured it, I'll have to pull it from the YouTube video.
I think you're gonna have to pull it from the YouTube video, because when I was testing it before, like, it didn't play back.
Okay, yeah.
But it did.
We'll just pull it from YouTube this week then.
Wow, I think we just found a new bug with sound recorder.
You'd think after almost 10 years we'd have this nailed.
Oh, you know what's different now?
What?
If you look down in the right-hand corner, they have mark recording, or has that always been there?
I've only just seen it, so maybe not. I don't. It probably has always been there. I only literally use this app to press record and stop. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I wish you could. Oh yeah, okay. I wish you could mute your mic.
That would
Isn't
be
it
nice.
weird?
Yeah.
Like how that's not there. Like
Yeah.
you just can't mute your own self.
Does it even have any
Anyway,
transcribing options? It should have like AI stuff. This is an app that needs AI. It hasn't got any AI in it.
Yes, this is a really good point. Yes, yeah, they haven't really paid attention to this app outside of apparently breaking it. Oh well, moving on. Let's talk about the new Surface devices, which were announced. I'll pass it over here to Zach, since he had the honor of getting the scoop on these devices months ago, and we again have to give Zach credit here for absolutely nailing this rumor. Much to Microsoft's probably chagrin, but at least Zach doesn't have to face the anger of Panos Panay any longer,
It's
which
true, yeah.
was a thing. So I'm sure other people at the Surface division are upset a little bit, but I think they're also a little bit more less offended by that. But you did get this completely right. So why don't you go over and tell us what these devices are, and we could talk a little bit about their target market, and then I'll go into, of course, the Pro 12, my impressions of it, since I actually do have it here and I've been using it.
Yeah. So as we expected, Microsoft did finally announce some new smaller Surface PCs. So these are 12 and 13 inches in screen size. The Surface Pro is 12 inch. The Surface Laptop is 13 inch. That's the thing I sort of got wrong in my original report. I said 11 to 12 inches. I was basically an inch off. It's 12 to 13 inches. And so they are still smaller, but they're not as small as we sort of were expecting them to be. But I think that makes sense. As I think I remember saying when I first started reporting on these, is that I don't understand why they're so small. I don't know who's asking for this. But with these 12 and 13 inch screen size, I think these actually make a little bit more sense. And so, the Surface Pro, I think, is the most interesting device. It's a 12 inch Surface Pro with an all enclosed chassis, which is a fantastic change. I'm so glad they've finally done that with a 90 hertz LCD display and uniform bezels. So this is the first Surface Pro that looks very similar to an iPad Air, in my opinion. So if you take a look at a 13-inch iPad Air and you put it side by side with this new Surface Pro 12-inch, face on, they look very similar. The chassis are very similar. Since there's no fan and vents on the Pro, it's a lot thinner and a lot lighter as a result. And there's even a new keyboard accessory, which no longer lifts to the lower bezel. If you remember, if you cast our minds back to the Surface Pro 3 event, Microsoft made a big deal about the keyboard being able to lift slightly to improve lappability. This is the first Surface Pro since the Pro 3 to not include that. And so the keyboard will lay flat on a surface or on your lap. And so I will be curious, and we'll be asking Dan in a minute, what lappability is like on this device, because it could technically be worse because it no longer has that little lift that the old Surface keyboard used to do. Of course, that's still a thing on the Pro 13-inch. And then we have the Surface Laptop 13-inch, which is essentially a replacement for the Surface Laptop Go. Microsoft isn't saying that these are replacing any Go devices, but I have it on the lowdown that the Laptop Go is probably not coming back. And so this 13-inch Surface Laptop is a replacement for it. I mean, if you take a look at it feature-wise, it is very similar to the Laptop Go. It's kind of like a Laptop Go Plus. It has a high-resolution screen, which is slightly larger. It still has things like the fingerprint reader, but it now has an all-metal chassis versus metal and plastic on the Laptop Go. So yeah, this laptop is, I think, a little bit less interesting. It's a nice-looking laptop, don't get me wrong. And for the price... We'll get into the price in a minute because there's been a little bit of drama around the price. But the Surface Pro 12-inch at $799, which it's been announced, is actually, I think, a great deal. I think you get quite a lot of computer here. These are powered by Snapdragon X Plus. You get 16 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of SSD storage. UFS storage in the base model. And so, UFS isn't amazing, but I think most people are going to be fine with that. I don't see that to be a super big problem. It's non-removable, unlike the flagship Pro, so you will be stuck with whatever storage configuration you opt for at checkout. But yeah, these are supposed to be sort of companion devices, I think. I don't know if Microsoft is expecting people to use these as their main devices. I mean, I think they're both very capable main devices, especially if you opt for the 512 gig storage options. But yeah, so these devices are available for pre-order now. They ship May 20, and they're available in some cool, three colors. They're available in silver, the platinum, as well as green, I think they call ocean, and purple, which they call violet. So the green and the purple ones are the sort of new colors for this wave of Surface PCs. And these will exist alongside the flagship Surface Pro 11 and Surface Laptop 7. So these don't replace those devices. They sort of, I guess, they're smaller siblings of those flagship devices, which are still available for sale and all of that stuff. Dan, you do have access to the Pro. What are your first impressions, and is it better than the 13-inch?
It's absolutely not better than the 13-inch. So, to clarify I doubt there's any first-time listeners, but if there were, I'm a huge fan of the Surface Pro series. I've always talked about this in my reviews that I think everybody should read reviews from everybody, of course. My bias is I love the Surface Pro. And why that's a good thing is because I know these devices inside and out. I know their history. I know what they're supposed to be like, and therefore my criticisms, if I have any, I think are a little bit more spot on. Versus some people in the tech space, it's absolutely true. A lot of them will review this device for a couple of days, they play with it, write it up, and then they literally will go back to their MacBooks. And I'm not discounting their opinions because I think that is an interesting angle too. But I am a fan of these devices. And Surface Pro 13, I gave it a perfect rating because it's an outstanding. I still use it. In fact, I literally, here's a criticism. I literally had to start cleaning the Alcantara pads on it where your palms rest, which is one of the first times I've actually had to do it. So I've been using this Pro 11 quite a lot, even compared to the old models. But yeah, it started browning a little bit. It cleaned okay. It could definitely clean better. That's still, I think, a weak spot. But it's also almost a badge of honor because it's like, no, I'm using the Pro 11 a lot. Don't forget, my Pro 11 is also the top tier. So it has the top tier X Elite chip and the OLED display. And the OLED display, along with the 120 hertz refresh, it's way better than this display. This display is good, though. It's an LCD one, so it's, pretty traditional. It does have 90 hertz refresh, which it helps smooth out things, but it's not that noticeable compared to 120. In fact, here are two interesting things. One, it ships out of the box at 60 hertz. So Microsoft doesn't even set it to 90. So I don't know how many people are going to go into the display settings knowing that they could even adjust it to 90 hertz. The other one is it ships for both on battery and plugged in on best efficiency mode, which I've never seen before. Almost all laptops ship in balanced, which makes sense. That's the middle one. And I usually then set my plugged in mode to best performance because who cares, right? But so between those two settings, it's clear Microsoft is really leaning into battery life. I would also say that it also speaks that they think the people who are buying this device aren't going to be power users who need a lot of CPU power. Not that it matters that much. I did find one issue though with this, which is, and I got to test a little bit more, but on best efficiency when running Microsoft Edge and using YouTube, after a while, I did notice the audio start to lose sync with the video.
Huh.
And so, yeah, and I've seen this before. And then as soon as I go switch it to balance mode, even while the video is playing, it catches back up. So there's definitely some optimizations that need to happen there. Beside that, though, honestly, you don't really notice how much of a difference day to day because the way I do use this device is web browsing, Slack, Telegram, watching videos, reading, of course, Office. And that, of course, is the target market for this device. I will try gaming on it too, though, for the review. In fact, I'll do a separate post about that because I haven't tried it yet, but I know people are kind of curious about it. Overall, though, okay, sorry for the nitty gritty stuff there. I think it's an amazing device. The build quality is fantastic. It's not, obviously being a 12-inch compared to the 13-inch, it's not radically smaller. It is slightly thinner because, as we talked about and speculated on this podcast, there were three options that they could have gone for the thermals on this, which was it has a fan with vents, which is how the Surface Pro 11 13-inch is. It could be no fan, but with vents. So you just get a, semi-active cooling. And then you could have a no fan, no vents. So it's a completely sealed system. And that's what Microsoft went with here. And I think that was the right choice because this is meant for lower, people who don't need that much power, doing the things I just described as it's being used for. And it gives this appearance of it's smoother. It looks more like an iPad, right? So I think they did a great design choice. They did move the pen to the back, and it has a special slot where it connects and charges to. I get a lot of questions about that magnet. Will it come off in your bag? I doubt it. That magnet is strong as hell. It is a really, you got to pry the pen off of the device, which is exactly how you want it. They did a really great job there. And being that the pen itself is pretty flat and it's slightly recessed, you're going to even lose a little bit of height on it. I think that pen will be there no matter what you do with it when you throw it into your bag. The two Type-C ports are on the right-hand side, which is different from Surface Pro, which has them on the left-hand side. But they did ditch the Surface Connect, which I'm fine with. I've said this before. When I travel with my Surface Pro, I don't take the Connect thing. I take usually one or two Type-C chargers for my phone and something else, and I just use that. In fact, they don't include the charger with this. They do give you a Type-C cable, so you can bring your own charger, and you can use kind of any charger you want on it. You do need at least 45 watt to get the fast charging. If you do want to buy the charger, Microsoft did send it to me, their new USB-C 45 watt wall charger. I'm trying to find out if it's GaN or not, but it is extremely tiny. It is a very, very small charger, which is awesome. It also has foldable prongs, which again you want, and you can tell they made this universal because it has a US prongs that you snap into it. So a UK version will be exactly the same, but they just have to change the connector part to it. But yeah, so the charger has been great with it. The display is nice. It's 220 ppi, which matches the Surface Go, which is interesting, even though the Surface Go is smaller. But it's a good display. Around 400 nits. I haven't tested the accuracy yet. As you would expect, the front-facing camera with Windows Hello is fantastic. Microsoft always nails cameras. It works flawlessly. Windows Hello is super fast. Audio is very good on it. Again, it has a similar 2-watt side speakers, and it's the spatial separation, the loudness, the crisp. It's awesome for audio. So I really like that. You asked about the keyboard, which now doesn't snap up to it, just kind of lays flat, sort of like the iPad and the old Surface devices. And Michael Fisher, aka Mr. Mobile, asked me that same question, and it's a great one because I am a big fan of that because it gives you an ergonomic posture that's angled. Surprisingly, I don't mind it here. I haven't had an issue with lappability because it is overall a smaller device, and that kind of -1 inch size is significant in terms of footprint. At least that's how it feels. But yeah, using my lap, I've had no issues. We should also mention that keyboard is backlit, which is a really good thing. I say that because Microsoft in the past has cut that before, right? The Surface Laptop Go didn't have a backlit keyboard. Did Surface Go have a backlit keyboard? I forgot.
It did, yes.
Yeah, okay. But the keyboard's awesome to type on. Really, really nice. Even the Surface Go's keyboard was great. It was on the edge of usable, like not being usable, yeah. I should say. They made it like any smaller, it would have been cramped. But this one, you have a lot more room, obviously, and it feels really natural. The touchpad is good. It's not haptic. I will say it was kind of cool in our reviewers workshop we had with Microsoft where we get to ask them questions. And I see this a lot more. People are asking, like, why doesn't it have a haptic touchpad? And the reason for that is right now is pricing. Haptic touchpads are more expensive than the traditional mechanical ones. And obviously they're trying to cut corners here to bring down the price as much as possible. But it is a good touchpad. And so I really like that. I've been using the Snapdragon X Plus on a few devices. The Asus ZenBook A14, which I've been gushing about, is an X Plus chip. I love the X Plus. I've had no issues with it in terms of performance. In fact, honestly, between it and the Elite, I don't do probably enough heavy tasks to notice a difference between them when I'm using it. And I'll keep saying this, that in my experience, I've been running Intel Core Ultra 2 Gen 2 chips on a few laptops. And I've said, given Intel credit, they're way more efficient. But I still notice Qualcomm chips just have better responsiveness and things just run faster in Windows on it. And specifically around the Edge browser, which I use a lot. But I think it's great. Now, people, of course, the other question we get asked a lot is, how is it as a tablet, just as a tablet? And, straight up, I don't ever use Surface really that way. I have on occasion. I did use Surface Go more like that. But I will be doing that more for the review. So it's kind of hard to answer. Everybody has a different threshold for what they consider too heavy and comfortable. Obviously, I think it could be lighter. I think it's 1.5 pounds, which isn't light. And I don't even know how that compares to the iPad, but I'm sure it's heavier. So I wish, but it's not bad. I don't mind. I started using it as just a tablet. It's the exact size of a legal size notepad, right? So it feels very familiar when you're holding it. And so I think it's good. And I think it'll be really good for taking notes on. So I may end up starting to use it more like that. And with the battery life, let's answer that one. So obviously I don't have any numbers right now. I think the battery life is going to be very good. I don't think it's going to be mind-blowing. I think they said 16 hours of video playback, or I forgot what they said. It's 16 hours long. I think on the low end, like worst case, I think you'll get 7 hours on it. And that's me being like real conservative, right? That's like kind of worst case scenario. I think you could probably push 8 to 9 and maybe even 10 hours on it, but I have to use it for at least a week to sort of get those numbers. I will say on the Asus ZenBook A14 with the Next Plus chip, I get up to 13 hours, and this is real world usage. I'm using the battery report, which is literally a history of charge and discharge of your laptop session. So every time you plug it in, it starts a new session, and it records the percentage of the battery and discharge rates and all this kind of stuff. And then like it gives you the hour estimate on, and then you can see that as a history, and then it gives you an average. If you don't know about battery report, we use it all the time here. Just search windowscentral.com battery report, and I have a tutorial on it. It just takes a second. It's a simple command that will generate into your C drive, and then you can just go read it yourself. But it's really, I like using battery report because, like I said, it's going to give you a real world of what you're getting out of this thing versus a benchmark, which synthetic benchmarks are good because you're consistent about what you're testing, because it's going to be always the same what you're running between devices, where this is not necessarily, but it gives you that kind of estimate. But yeah, I don't know. Did you have any other questions about like?
We should probably mention the fact that the pen now attaches to the back of the device rather than in the keyboard deck, and I think that's a really, really interesting change, because obviously the original Surface Pros sort of had pen storage with magnets on the tablet, but that was a problem because the pen would often fall off the tablet in your bag and stuff. And so eventually Microsoft moved to storing the pen in the keyboard deck, and that's what's currently the case on the Surface Pro 13-inch. But with this new Surface Pro 12-inch, they've actually added a charging pad, I guess, on the back of the device, and that's where the pen is now stored. So it is now stored back on the tablet, but they've done some work to at least try and ensure that it won't fall off in your bag, right, Dan?
Yeah, as I said, I did talk about that earlier, that the magnet it's super strong. Like they totally nailed the magnet. It's awesome.
I just think it's really interesting how in a way now this is the first Surface Pro in a long while that really pushes forward being a tablet first and foremost, because the Pro 13-inch, you kind of need the keyboard to be able to store and charge the pen. Without the keyboard, you either rely on the cradle that the Surface Pen comes in, or you just don't have the charger and you have to just store the pen separately, which is really kind of cumbersome. Now you can just have it on the back of the device, and so I really think this is the first Surface Pro that's really leaning back into trying to be a tablet. Windows needs to be better, though. Windows 11, I would argue, isn't an amazing tablet OS, especially since tablet mode isn't a thing on Windows 11 versus Windows 10. When you open apps and stuff, I don't think they open full screen and all this other stuff. So there's a lot of improvements that needs to be done to Windows still before the Surface Pro 12-inch becomes a viable iPad Air competitor in regards to being a tablet. But in regards to being a 2-in-1, I think the Surface Pro 12-inch is a better choice than the iPad Air if you're looking to use the iPad Air with, say, the Magic Keyboard and stuff.
Which isn't backlit.
Which doesn't have a backlit key. Yeah, exactly. Both trackpads are not haptic, right, on the Magic Keyboard as well as on the Pro 12-inch. It's a traditional sort of dive board trackpad, and that's to save money. I think this new keyboard it's $149, I believe, and so that's
$149.
yeah, it's significantly
Versus,
cheaper.
but yeah, by the way, so talking about the Magic keyboard, that's $250.
Yeah,
So it's $100 more,
yeah,
right?
and
So for $250, you can get the keyboard and pen combo. And just quickly, so someone is saying in comments here, and I've been hearing this. Sorry to say that I love Windows, but with the price of performance from MacBook Air, it's difficult to buy a Surface now. Two things. One, I always joke around on this podcast that I'll say it now. Someone's going to complain about the pricing of Surface. They've been complaining about pricing of Surface for the last 13 years. I need a better criticism. In a way, I get it. You want it to be cheaper, and we can discuss that. But it's literally, I can tell you, when Surface Pro 12, the 13-inch comes out, you'll complain about the pricing. When the new Surface laptop comes out, you'll complain about the pricing and say, well, I could just get a Dell and it's cheaper. It's always going to be the case. From now until when Surface dies, they're always going to be slightly more expensive than the other devices out there. And that's just the reality. And Microsoft clearly doesn't care. I think part of it, we said before, is they don't want to cannibalize sales from their own partners. Two, they've had success enough with Surface that they don't feel they need to drop pricing. Three, they've had a lot of success with getting Surface into enterprise. I've said it before, our company, which is huge, Future PLC, it's literally the largest digital media publisher in the world, or if not the one of them. They distribute Surface Laptop Go's as their company computer. And so the pricing thing doesn't matter. The performance, I think you're wrong on, at least in terms of like the M3. So I already put one benchmark into my hands-on, and I don't want to give the numbers to Geekbench because without comparison, it doesn't matter. But I can tell you this, it performs faster on single core than a Intel Core Ultra 7 155H series chip.
Yeah.
And on multi-core, it's just shy of matching it. And what makes that interesting is that Intel chip is 16 cores. This only has 8, and it almost matches in performance. So we're talking a Core i7H series chip and a fanless closed system is what you're getting in performance on. That's absurd compared to like someone was bringing up Surface Go earlier, which has the Intel N200 chip. And so I was like curious what the performance difference is. I'm not kidding. You can do the math. It's 300% difference. 300% faster.
Yeah.
So like the idea that it doesn't compete with the M3 is, I think, nonsense. And especially how people are going to use this device.
Yeah, so, I think a lot of people get trapped in the mindset that because it's not the flagship processor, it can't be that good. I think a lot of people for some reason think the X Plus and the base Snapdragon X is more akin to like a Snapdragon 8CX rather than something completely otherworldly, because these are different gen chips, and so the X Plus is actually better than a lot of last gen Intel processors, like flagship Intel processors in laptops and stuff. And I think a lot of people forget that, so they see X Plus and go, oh, this must be the rubbish processor. And it's like, no, they're technically all the same processor, just slightly clocked higher with some more cores. Like there's not these chips aren't that different. The biggest differences are really in the GPU, but on devices like this, you're not going to really be utilizing many processors that require intensive GPU workloads. Anyway, again, this is supposed to be an iPad Air competitor. You might play some lightweight games on it, but for the most part, it's supposed to be a consumption device. It's supposed to be a productivity device. It's not supposed to be a device where you edit 4K video and render, all sorts of high-low data sets. It's not for that. And so A lot of people do get trapped in that. And regarding the price thing, you're totally right. Everybody always complains. I thought the Pro 12-inch at $799 was an incredible deal. You basically get almost a flagship computer for $200 less than the base model Surface Pro 13-inch. The screen is slightly less in regards to resolution and screen hertz, but it is still a higher resolution and a higher refresh rate than most devices at $799. Most devices at $799 have a 1080p 60 hertz display, like the Lenovo Yoga, I can't remember the name of it now. It was the Snapdragon X Plus laptop, basically $799, $649 if you find it on sale. But it had a 1080p 60 hertz screen. It was one of the, other than the fact that it was OLED.
And
it was
often not Windows. Often you don't get Windows Hello IR.
Yes, fingerprint,
facial recognition.
That's
not to mention the cameras tend to be garbage. Where this is a really good camera.
Yeah. And it's so thin and light. It's basically the Surface Pro X reborn. If you take a look at the Pro X's specs, the Pro X was, I think, 7.3 millimeters thin and 774 grams in weight. This new Pro 12-inch is a little bit thicker, so I think it's 7.8 millimeters, but it's lighter. It's 686 grams. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there in regards to the thickness and weight, but I think it's a worthy trade-off, because I think once you get down to 8 millimeters, you're kind of in that territory where it's thin enough, especially when it's fanless. And so at that point, bringing the weight down is more important. And because this device is lighter than the Pro X, this really is like a Surface Pro X reborn, in my opinion. It now has the performance behind it. It now has a high refresh rate screen, which is great. It's a little bit of a shame that there isn't an OLED option, I think, but that's something that we can see in Gen 2, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, this is a lot of that's pricing, of course. I'll also say, I get the comparison with iPads, or even if you want to do the MacBook Air. Okay, I get it. It's interesting to see that. I will also say, by the way, and I've mentioned this before, that Apple has been getting more aggressive with pricing. They're not doing it out of the kindness of their own hearts. They're not like, we're going to reduce our profits because we just feel like giving back to people. They're cutting their prices and being more aggressive and hitting these lower price points because PC is coming out with these kind of devices and getting more aggressive and bringing down those prices too. Yeah. So that's why Apple is getting competitive there. So it's great to see that. Don't get me wrong. I think we've all complain Apple's been too expensive for years. And so it's great to see them lowering prices, but they're not doing it because they feel great. They're doing it because of competition, and competition coming from the PC space. I'll also say that, I don't think there's a ton of people that are going to walk into the store and be like, should I get an iPad or this? There may be, I don't know. But I feel like if you're in the Windows world, this is like your answer. Whereas if you're already in the Apple world, or you just want the tablet, but there's just different pros and cons to each. Don't get me wrong, the iPad's beautiful hardware and all that, but I've had iPads before, and the reason I don't use them, and I don't really use Android tablets, except for the one I just bought, which I use almost exclusively for reading, which I talked about last week on the podcast, if you want to listen to that. But I just don't find these devices useful. I have a Samsung Tab, their top tier tablet, and it's beautiful. It's super thin, it's light, it's got good battery life. But even if you throw a keyboard on these devices, it's not a PC. It's just not. These are not PCs. And you can fudge things on an iPad and get away with certain things. But when it comes to multitasking, using the touchpad and all this kind of stuff, you're going to be way faster on a PC, which is why I will use a device like that. So I feel it's a little weird to compare them, but don't get me wrong. Performance, you're getting 16 gigs of RAM out of the box, at least 256 gigs of storage, but 512 is one we have here. And I just told you the processor is equivalent to a Core i7 H series, the first gen Core Ultra, but it's a fanless closed system. And that brings up the next question, which is, will there be an Intel or AMD version? No, absolutely not. No. The reason is they don't have any chip that can do this, right? I don't know how they could do a fanless Core Ultra 3, or Core 3, right? Let's go because they'd have to bring the price. So it'd have to be a Core 3 chip, which I've never even seen on the market before. But they won't do it. Even if they could do the thermals, which I don't think is possible, right? And I'm not even sure that they could do it on the pricing, but they won't do it because the lower tier core chips from Intel don't even have an NPU. And Microsoft is boasting about this being
Yes.
the lightest and like smallest Copilot Plus PC.
Yeah.
This does everything that your top tier Copilot Plus PCs do, because all Qualcomm devices have a 45 TOPS NPU on board. So there's absolutely no way they're going to be like, oh, here's an Intel version. By the way, it's not a Copilot Plus PC anymore. It can't do any of that AI stuff. Like, there's just no way. So, I mean, no, Intel and AMD, there won't be a version.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, I believe this is the first Snapdragon X device altogether that is fanless, right? I think all of them up until now have had fans in some regard.
Yes.
So that's really nice as well. We should also mention the 13-inch Surface laptop does have a fan. So the Pro 12 is the only device that doesn't have a fan. It's a fully enclosed system. The laptop 13 still has a fan. And Microsoft says they did that so that the laptop can have longer sustained performance, which makes sense. People buying a laptop might have workflows where that makes a little bit more sense. And so
and two things with that. One, Surface laptops have always had very quiet fans.
Yeah. I don't even hear one in my laptop 7.
Yeah, and this only has one fan. And on Qualcomm chips, that fan barely ever comes on. The only time I ever heard fans on a Qualcomm device is when it's doing a Windows update. But like in normal day-to-day usage, never comes on, never a problem.
Yeah.
But I think it was good that they included the fan on the laptop to make it a little bit more powerful.
Yeah. I will say, so this, as I said, the $799 Surface Pro 12-inch, I think is a great deal. And again, if you're a student, you can even get 50 or 60 bucks off on the Microsoft Store, which is really nice. The Surface Laptop 13-inch is $899, and that's a little bit less of a good deal, in my opinion, for what you get in the laptop 13-inch. I think the laptop 13-inch makes way more concessions to get down to that price than the Pro 12-inch does. As we mentioned, it has a high refresh rate screen, still has Windows Hello Face, still have premium, build and all this other stuff. The laptop 13 still has the premium build, but it is a 60 hertz 1080p screen, which is a huge step down over the Surface Laptop 7's display. It's a haptic it's a traditional dive board trackpad versus haptic on the Laptop 7. And if you think about it, all of these concessions you're making to get down to $899, for $100 more, you can get a base model Laptop 7 with a 10-core Snapdragon X Plus, 120 hertz high resolution screen, and a haptic trackpad. That's worth jumping an extra $100 for, in my opinion. You just make too many sacrifices just for saving $100. Now, what's interesting about that is Microsoft didn't tell us this when they were briefing us on these new devices, but Microsoft has actually stopped selling that Surface Pro 11 and Surface Laptop 7 at $1,000. They no longer exist on the Microsoft Store. And the reason for that, I think, Microsoft isn't saying this, but it's quite clearly obvious why they've done this.
Yeah.
It's to make the price gap between these new smaller PCs and the flagships bigger. Because, with the $999 Pro 11 and Laptop 7, the new Pro 12-inch was only $200 cheaper, and the laptop 13-inch was only $100 cheaper. And that, you could argue that for the Pro, but the only $100 difference between the two laptops makes no sense for how many sacrifices you're making. And so Microsoft has just outright removed that model from the Microsoft Store. So now the flagship Pro and laptop starts at $1,200. And so now there's a much bigger price delta between the smaller ones and the flagship ones. And that makes more sense. So when, these devices go on sale, you'll see them down to $999, but you won't see them any lower than that. You can still find the original $999 configuration of the Pro 11 and Laptop 7 at places like Best Buy. And they're on sale right now. You can find a Pro 11 entry level for $799, the same price.
Same thing with laptop.
Yeah,
there's a laptop that's $799 too.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic deal. And you should absolutely, if you're looking at, you should go for those ones almost always. Except for in some cases, the Pro 12-inch makes more sense than the flagship Pro 11, in my opinion. I think the Pro 12-inch's design and weight and thinness is a much better overall package than what the 13-inch offers. The 13-inch is quite bulky and a bit heavier, but it does also support things like the Flex keyboard. So, and obviously a better display. It's still an LCD one, but it's much high resolution, and
the 13-inch is like a better device, but it's when you start going to the top tier,
right?
Like when you get the OLED display, you get the Flex keyboard. You're also going to, of course, get the top tier X Elite chip, but that makes a gap pretty big. But like if you're going to go for the Pro 13, that's one I said you should go for, because that display makes a big difference. I mean, it's a really, really nice display. Whereas this display, it's fine, but it's not like you're not gonna be completely surprised. I also say, regarding the pricing, this is how biased the media tends to be, and how silly, when the Surface Pro 11, the 13-inch model, came out, people were also complaining about the price, and I had to go out there and say it's actually $200 cheaper now. Like, and because they doubled the RAM. The lowest tier Surface Pro 9 was 8 gigabytes and had 128 gigs of storage. The new Qualcomm version was 16 gigs, but 256 storage. And they did that while bringing the price down. So even then, when they were bringing the price down, people were still like, it's still too expensive. It's like, come on, man. Like,
Yeah.
because they didn't mention, no one mentioned outside of my review about doing a price comparison about how the new model was actually cheaper than the previous Intel version. And it's just like, I think that's important. So
before we move on from this, I do want to sort of talk about what could be next for Surface now that we have these devices. Specifically, what could be next for Surface Pro, because I think the 12-inch Surface Pro is quite different from the 13-inch Surface Pro in regards to design and sort of ethos and just sort of what it stands for. It's very much more a tablet than a laptop at this point with the Pro 12-inch versus the 13-inch, which is, I think, marketed more as a laptop than a tablet. And so I do wonder what we're going to see with the next-gen Surface Pro 12. Will we see two sizes launch at the same time? Will we get a 13-inch and a 12-inch right out the gate, or is the 12-inch Pro like a separate thing that gets refreshed every so often? These are all questions we don't know the answer to. And also, there's a big design discrepancy between the 12-inch Pro and the 13-inch Pro right now. They look very different. And so will the next-gen flagship Pro adopt this design on the Pro 12? I think the answer is yes. I think I'd be very surprised if the next-gen flagship Pro doesn't have uniform bezels and a more boxy chassis. I don't know if they'll drop the fan. I don't think they can, because the Pro is the big one's supposed to be
I don't know, because we're talking the next gen Snapdragon chip. We don't know that much about it. Yeah, but I could tell you, the only thing I can tell about the X2, it's going to be like really powerful. It's going to be competing with the M4 at that point.
The thing is, the M4 can exist in an enclosed system because the iPad Pro runs an M4, and that doesn't.
So, yeah, I mean, to be clear, the X Elite can absolutely live in a fanless closed system. It's up to the OEM to control that. You would have to reduce the TDP, the power going to the chip, and bring down the performance. And of course, long-term sustainability of mic would probably go down too. And we see this even with Apple stuff. It's not like the closed iPad with an M3 performs as good as a MacBook Pro with a fanned M3, right? There are going to be differences there. So they could do it, but the question is, do they want to compromise on performance to achieve that design? And I'm going to go with they won't. They don't. They expect, because we asked about the fan on the Pro 11 when it came out, and they said we could have done it, but people expect this thing, when we talk to our customers, to run like a straight up laptop PC. And so they don't want to compromise in performance and that kind of stuff. And that's why they did it. So I guarantee you that they'll probably do that here. The matching displays is interesting. Or sorry, the bezels. Because are you saying they're going to get rid of the angled keyboard that snaps up?
I don't know, actually.
How does that work?
Well, here's what I will say. I find it very interesting in the marketing materials for the Pro 12-inch and how they talk about this new keyboard. They don't seem to, they're not saying it's, in a lot of ways, they actually make it sound like it's better than what's on the Pro 13-inch. They're very wishy-washy with their wording, how it's supposed to be this ergonomic thing and all this other stuff. That they were talking about how it can like stretch slightly and other stuff when you rotate it around the back and whatnot. This is a tough one. I wouldn't be surprised if they did get rid of that. But at the same time, it wouldn't be too hard for them to implement it. The bezel isn't that thin. Like, it's like they can still do it. And if you look at the Pro Flex keyboard, it does already have a little bit of space. If you attach it to the 13-inch and lift it up, that you can see the bezel at the bottom there. And so I'm wondering if that they left that room there for. Oh, we should also mention the fact that the Pro 12-inch actually has an entirely different system for connecting the keyboard. It uses pogo pins, which the flagship Surface Pro doesn't. That uses a more traditional sort of connection thing. But this is pogo pins, similar to what's on the back of the iPad, which is very interesting. And would that carry over to the 13-inch? Maybe. Like these are all questions we don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did drop the lifting thing, because if they've figured out a way to make the device more lappable without it, then I don't know. I think they might just.
Yeah, I got to do more testing because like I haven't really tested it also like on a table.
Yeah.
Because like when you have the angled keyboard and you have that gap now between the keyboard and like a flat surface, it gives you a little bit more bounce and a little bit more clearance. When it's on flat on a table, you're not, feels a little bit harder. So I got to kind of test that. I'd be curious. I don't know if I'd be devastated if they got rid of that feature. I do like the pen on the back.
Yeah, that is nice. Yeah,
because it's I think even easier to access than the current Flex keyboard, which they brought it forward, right? They stopped hiding the pen, which I thought was a good move. But interestingly, they had to move the camera from the center of the device, the world-facing camera from the center. They had to put it to the edge.
That's fine.
Which is not unusual, right? That's how all tablet cameras are basically. So, but that's an interesting choice. Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see that. Oh, Raphael is asking a good question. Is Microsoft eating the tariffs on these devices, or are you expecting price increase soon? From our understanding, they brought in enough devices to sustain them for a little while on the market. So, these presumably came into the U.S. weeks ago on pallets and are in a warehouse and ready to go out and that kind of thing. Now, obviously, that's a and there is the tariffs haven't really kind of gone into effect for electronics. There's currently the exception for PCs as well as other electronics. Although the administration said they're going to have special other tariffs for electronics at some point. So I think we're okay for now. But if this goes on for 6 months, then obviously these companies are going to start to run out of stock.
Yeah.
And then they would have to re-import them. And then they would be at the mercy of whatever those tariffs are at that time.
I think at this point, assuming that the Pro 12 and the Laptop 8 arrive this October, November timeframe, I think we've probably seen the production run for the Pro 11 and Laptop 7 finished at this point. I can't imagine they're going to make much more from here on out. And so I think what Microsoft already has in stock is what they will basically stick with until they're out of stock. And hopefully by the time they're out of stock, the newer devices will have already been announced. So maybe we won't see price hikes until the Pro 12 Laptop 8. I would, that's not to say that they won't hike prices earlier than that just to sort of brace for it, I guess. I don't know. But I think somebody even asked Microsoft on the briefing call for these new devices about tariffs, and they didn't have an exact answer. And I'm also paraphrasing this, but they sort of said we're still figuring out where we're going to land with that. And so, yeah, we're not seeing anything in regards to tariffs on these new Surface devices and also the existing devices just yet. The price hike I mentioned with the Pro 11 and Laptop 7 was only because they've removed the entry-level config. All the other configs still exist, and they are still the same price as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of reference. People are like saying, and we even had someone in comments say that the 20% price hike. They didn't hike the price. They just removed a lower tier device. So it just made the gap larger. But the actual prices of all the other tiers are still the same, and they can still drop down on sale. So that's a thing too. Yeah, these are all good points. I forgot what I was going to say. There was something else. I'll come back to it. But I don't know. My overall feelings so far, like I said, I think this is it's a really good tablet. This is the other thing, that there is literally nothing else if you want a Windows tablet at this size.
A 2-in-1, yeah.
There's HP doesn't have anything. Lenovo doesn't have anything. Lenovo has a ThinkPad that's like more like the Surface Pro 13-inch, but it's a business device and it's not doesn't have as much cool stuff, and it's Intel based. So, there is that. There is just no competition here. And I don't know if we'll see much competition here because I think tablet PCs are still pretty niche. It's a small group of people who buy them. That said, going by our site traffic, people were way more interested in this device than the new Surface laptop. So I thought that was kind of interesting too. So
yeah.
And then I guess finally for those, if you have a Surface Go and you're wondering should I upgrade, I mean, it's like I said, It's not even comparable. The only thing you're going to lose is the fact that the 10-inch is significantly smaller, but I think the rest of what you're getting here, like I literally mentioned, it's like 300% faster. And you're going to get like literally all day battery life on this thing. And a better keyboard and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, if you have a Surface Go, I think this is a no-brainer to upgrade. I also had some people asking, they're coming from a Surface Pro 6 and Surface Pro 7, should they upgrade? I'm like, dude, if you upgrade from that to this, you're going to be like blown away by the speed and performance and everything else around.
Yeah, because the Pro 6, the Pro 4 to the Pro 7, their screen sizes are only 12.3.
Yeah, something like that.
So you're basically getting the same size screen. Like it's hard. You've got to not got to notice the difference at all. I always forget that the original Pros have tiny screens compared to the.
That's a good point. Insane. Oh yes, someone's asking comments about why they didn't do 120 hertz screen and they went with 90. It's cost. That's it. Yeah, it's a simple thing. It's well, I would also say it's probably two things. Yeah, cost is definitely a big factor. It just costs more to have that kind of display. And two, battery. It's good. That's going to use more battery life, and they're clearly trying to push the battery life on this thing as hard as possible, which is, as I mentioned earlier, it ships out of the box with best efficiency mode for both power and battery, which is unusual. It's usually balanced. And they set the display default at 60 hertz out of the box. So you would have to go manually change it even to 90. So they're literally focusing on battery. But those are, I would say, the two reasons for it. But if you want the 120, that's another reason to go to the bigger 13-inch, right? You're just going to get a lot more stuff there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm very excited for these. I think these are a nice device. Again, the laptop is a less of great of a deal, but the Pro, I think, is, can't argue with it. I think it's a great product for the price you pay for it.
Another similar question: is the 12-inch display as good as a Surface Go? The Go has surprisingly crisp display. I think it's better than the Surface Go.
The same.
Yeah, I was going to say the crispness is interesting because they're both 220 ppi. So you're going to get the same crispness. You're just going to get an extra 2 inches of screen real estate. So
I do keep seeing a lot of people asking about what is this the replacement for the Surface Go and the Surface Laptop Go? As far as Microsoft is saying no. But as far as I'm aware, the Laptop Go is done. Like, we're not going to get another Laptop Go, at least not for a very long while. This new laptop 13-inch is essentially the replacement for it. On the Pro and Go side, the tablet, the 12-inch Surface Pro does not replace the Laptop Go, the Surface Go. The Surface Go 4, to my knowledge, is still in production, air quotes. It's still something that they make and sell to enterprise customers. And so they will probably do a Go 5 at some point because, the Go is $499, I want to say, or $529, something like that. It is significantly cheaper than $799, and I think there is still a market for this sort of sub $600 tablet for frontline workers in the enterprise space. And Microsoft wants to continue addressing that market. The only problem they have is they can't find a chip to put in this device right now that is also Copilot Plus capable. As far as I'm aware, the internal sort of motto going forward is every Surface PC they launch has to be Copilot Plus. They can't go forward unless it's a Copilot Plus PC going forward. So the Surface Go 5 is in limbo, really, because it's like, what chip could we put in it? We could put a Snapdragon X in it. Could we bring it down to $499? Maybe not. I think that's the struggle they're having internally right now. And so I think the Go 5 is just delayed until they can get the components and the prices down to where they need them to be for it to go into a device that starts at $499. But everything else, the Laptop Go is absolutely not gonna. I don't think we'll see a Laptop Go 4. I think that's the end of that line.
Just two other things I want to address from some questions. No micro SD card and removable SSD. Dud. I'm with you on the removable SSD. I think that would have been really nice to have, and it was the trend we were seeing with Microsoft, and so that's true. The no micro SD, I honestly do not care. This is anecdotal and my personal thing. I've never used the micro SD slot on the Surface Pro. I'm pretty sure Microsoft has metrics on this. My guess is there are people who use it on the 13-inch model, but I don't think it's like 95% of people who buy it are using. I guarantee it's probably below 50%. doing that, especially since you can upgrade the storage anyway on that device. So as to why that is, again, it comes back. I did ask Microsoft literally about both of those things just a couple hours ago. And the answer is kind of typical. One, save money, right? They have to hit a price point at $799 here. And so you got to cut corners. And if you're going to cut a corner, a micro SD card, get that out of there. Like I said, I don't, it's got to be less than 50% of people. I mean, that's less than 30% of people use a micro SD card on a regular basis in the Surface devices. So yeah, they got to cut that there. And the other thing is design choices too. It's more complicated to make a removable device, a removable like SSD storage. It's going to drive up costs and all this kind of stuff. They may do it later on, but I agree. I think it's a negative. I wish it did have that. I'm kind of surprised it doesn't, but it's pricing and design choices that they make, and that's another reason why to go to the Pro, the Pro 13-inch, I should say. And what was the other thing? Oh, no 5G model. So I get asked that one a lot. Yeah, there's no 5G, and I don't expect a 5G one. Mm-hmm. The reason is just by looking at it, like they would have to, unless they designed a separate chassis, because they would need a separate design chassis for 5G, because 5G is very complicated to do antenna systems. It's not one. I think sometimes you have like 6 on a device, but they're all around the edges of, you can see it on your phone. You'll see the little bands on your phone edge. You'll also see them on the Surface Pros with 5G. And so they have to really start from scratch. And then what they do is that 5G chassis becomes the default chassis for all the devices. And they just take out the modem and the antennas, right? To build it without 5G and to add it later would be, you'd have to redesign it. And so they may do it later on. So like I said, maybe they do have a design and they're waiting on it. But knowing Microsoft in a first gen product, they want to see how it's received and how it sells, and whether or not they should make significant modifications for a second gen, whether or not they should do a second gen, and all these kind of things. But, Zach and I are with everyone here. We both want to see a 5G model. It would be awesome with 5G. There's no doubt. And it is funny that, it's a Qualcomm device. So making it 5G in terms of the SoC is simple, but the rest of it is difficult. But I think we won't see that until a second gen.
Yeah. Right. We really should move on because we spent an hour on talking about
services. Sorry.
That's all right. We've got more to talk about, including some new Windows stuff. Microsoft actually, if I can get this to show 1 second, announced a whole bunch of Windows stuff alongside these new Surface PCs. A lot of this stuff is Copilot Plus. And of course, the screen sharing isn't working. All right, we won't do that. But Microsoft announced a whole bunch of stuff. They announced, let's see here. They announced a new feature called AI Agent in Settings. Now, this is interesting because if we cast our minds back to the May 2024 event where they announced the Surface Pro 11 and Laptop 7, they did show off a lot of agentic Copilot stuff, just sort of generally throughout the system in File Explorer, in Settings, and none of that ever materialized until now, essentially. So Microsoft has announced an AI agent coming to Settings, which will allow you to essentially type in the thing you want to configure within the Settings app and have an AI agent sort of bring that setting to the forefront and have it apply the setting for you, as long as you click apply first. So it asks permission to make the change, but it just is one button on your part, and then the AI agent can go in and do all the changes you want to make. And so that's really,
Zach,
really
just quickly, your microphone sounds a little mechanical. I don't know if something changed a little bit. I don't know.
That's interesting.
Yeah, no big deal. You can continue.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Better. So how this? Sorry. What?
No, never mind.
Okay. Yeah, so this is really going to be helpful for people who don't know where some settings are. The Settings app is quite easy to use, in my opinion, but if you're not a tech enthusiast or a Windows enthusiast, the Settings app might be quite daunting. You may not know where to go to change your dark theme or night theme, or your wallpaper, or check for updates, or turn on and off Windows Defender. Those sort of things are quite buried in there. And so you'll be able to just type into the Settings app where the search bar is, I want to turn on dark mode, or how do I make my cursor bigger? And instead of finding the option and then clicking into it and then going in and doing the setting yourself, the UI will literally just pop up a box that says, would you like to apply the setting you've just asked for? You click apply and the AI will do it for you. So that's really nice. And I suspect we're going to see these AI agents appear elsewhere in the system over time. The settings apps is the first place we're getting it. But Microsoft has also said that AI actions are coming to File Explorer. They haven't gone into detail as to what that entails. At least as far as I'm aware, I'm looking through this now and they don't really talk about it. But I'm assuming that will mean things like file sharing and moving files. You'll be able to just be like, hey, File Explorer, can you just move this to where I was last and stuff? And the AI will be able to do it for you, which is kind of interesting. They also announced more actions coming to Click to Do. And so obviously Click to Do is that feature where you press the Windows key and you click on your trackpad and that brings up an AI overlay. You'll be able to do text and image actions such as Ask Copilot, Practicing Reading Coach, and Read with Immersive Reader, which are now available to Windows Insiders. And things like schedule a meeting with Teams, send a message with Teams, ask Microsoft 365 Copilot, convert to table with Excel, and draft with Copilot and Word is coming later this month to Insiders. So you'll be able to initiate all of those actions straight with it from Click to Do without having to manually go into these apps and services first. A lot of new features coming to Photos, Paint, and Snipping Tool. Photos is getting a new relight feature using AI. So this is all Copilot Plus stuff. This is all relying on, to my knowledge, all relying on the NPU. And so you'll be able to relight images in the Photos app, which is really nice. Paint is getting a sticker generator. So you can create custom digital stickers from a simple text prompt, type a short phrase to generate ready-to-use stickers that can be added to the canvas, copied into documents, or shared in chats. So that's really interesting. And there's also, finally, Paint is getting an object select tool, which is amazing. It's basically a mini Photoshop now. I think for a lot of people, Paint is now ready to replace Photoshop for a lot of people. Someone like me who only really uses Photoshop to crop things or cut out things from an image, I think Paint's getting there, and it can, I think, do a lot of that now, which is really cool. The snipping tool is getting text extract features, and it's also getting the ability to capture area to tightly frame on-screen content, reducing the need for post-capture cropping. So using AI to sort of just automatically crop things for you, which is really nice. So that's really cool. There's some accessibility improvements as well. And then Microsoft also announced the new start menu, which is something we've talked about on the podcast before, but it's now more customizable. You can have more pinned icons showed at one point, so you can have multiple rows of it, and you can have them automatically all show at the same time by default, which is nice. You can now remove the recommended feed if you turn off all the recommended settings in the settings app, and the apps list is now present on the main screen as well. So that exists at the bottom, and that's now got 3 different views. It's got the traditional list view, it's got a new grid view, and it's also now got a category view. And the category view uses air quotes AI to sort of automatically group your different apps into folders, similar to the app shelf on iOS. And then there's also the new phone link companion thing, which has been in testing for, I want to say, almost a year now. It's been a while, but they're now officially announcing its general availability. So it'll be coming very soon if you don't already have it. And that exists on the sort of right side of the start menu. And with this new start menu, you can collapse the panel. So if you don't want to see it for whatever reason, you can press a button. It's a single button and it just hides it. You can press that button again to re-show it if you want to, which is super nice. Notepad is getting a whole bunch of stuff. It's getting to summarize the ability to summarize long text, and it's also getting markdown style input. So that's amazing. So you'll be able to do some basic formatting within Notepad, which is really nice. And then Microsoft just went over all the stuff that they announced with the Copilot app recently, things like Copilot Vision and whatnot, and all of that stuff, which is nice. But that's pretty much all the big stuff. A lot of stuff announced in this blog post. A lot of it is AI. A lot of it is NPU based, so Copilot Plus exclusive. These were interestingly announced as new experiences for the next generation of Windows. And then at the top, of the blog post, they do mention 3 bullet points as to how they're moving to innovate Windows. And so they say, and I'll read this word for word: we believe technology should adapt to you, not the other way around. As we continue to deliver new and unique experiences, we will increasingly seek to personalize features to your needs, with your permission, understanding your preferences to deliver a richer and more consistent experience. We believe experiences should be meaningfully useful and fundamentally trustworthy. Our features are customer focused and purpose driven, addressing addressing the real problems users face before we even build. Our features undergo rigorous assessments for safety, security, and privacy, and we seek to solve the hardest problems users face on their PC. We are committed to going beyond incremental improvements to reimagine how Windows can empower people in new and groundbreaking ways on the devices they turn to when things matter most. That last bullet point is really interesting. The fact that they say they want to move beyond incremental improvements and reimagine how Windows can empower people is, to me, that sort of wording implies a sort of a next gen Windows, right? Some sort of AI based OS, which we're yet to see. And so, yeah, what the stuff that was announced today, some of it is quite interesting, but it's still very much Windows 11. There's no real UI changes and stuff. I think we're still yet to see what an OS can look like when it's built from the ground up with AI at the sort of forefront. And so, yeah, I think maybe Microsoft is starting to tease that. I think maybe next year we might see maybe. I don't want to say we'll see Windows 12 next year, but we could see a big update to Windows that does sort of introduce a new UI that is a lot more AI focused, and that would be very, very interesting. But yeah, that's all the big Windows stuff. A lot there, and a lot of it is going to be with Windows Insiders first. So I would suspect most of this won't start shipping until later this year, probably timed with 25H2 or around 25H2. A lot of people are assuming this will be 25H2, but the way Windows is built these days, it will almost certainly always also be 24H2. The features are built to sort of be applicable across different version numbers these days, and so the differences between 23H2 and 24H2 and upcoming 25H2 are negligible in regards to surface level features. And so a lot of these features will probably ship on 24H2 as well. And so the 25H2 release coming later this year will very much just be for enterprises and support Windows more than anything else. I can't imagine there'll be too much in the way of new surface level features that are exclusive to 25H2. But yeah, a lot of very exciting stuff. We're finally in the weeds now. We're finally getting to that point where Copilot Plus PCs are starting to justify themselves. I think it's fair to say, a year ago, when Copilot Plus PCs launched, the amount of features that launched with them didn't justify them as Copilot Plus PCs. There wasn't much there at all. But we've now got Recall and Click to Do and AI in Search, and we're soon getting AI in Settings, and we're also going to get AI actions in File Explorer, and all of the new NPU stuff in Photos and Paint and Snipping Tool. The NPU is starting to justify itself, I think. Would still be great to see these features work on the GPU for non-Copilot Plus PCs, but that's unlikely to happen because I think Microsoft would very much like to have you move to a Copilot Plus PC, which makes no sense for desktop PCs. Copilot Plus and desktop still is a mystery, like tower PCs. I'm talking like custom builds. Microsoft seems to have no answers there, but everything else, laptops, tablets, mini PCs, Copilot Plus is applicable to all of them. And so we're going to see more of that this year, I think.
Which is great. Copilot Plus was, you wrote an article about this, kind of a joke when it launched, because it's premier feature Recall had a lot of controversy and it didn't launch with it. But now we have Recall and we have Click to Do. And I've said at the beginning of the podcast, I think Click to Do and Phone Link, and I love that they've added Phone Link to the start menu.
Yeah.
Which again is optional. You can disable it if you don't like it. I love it because now when I bring up my start menu, I can immediately see my phone status. I can see latest messages, and I can quickly send files to my phone. Like, I think is just awesome. But I get not everybody wants it, but it's good. And Click to Do is just in terms of productivity. My biggest issue always with, especially these days, the multimedia and stuff like that, is like if I want to do something with photos, it's like I got to find the photo on the internet. I got to download it. Then I got to save the file to a directory. And then I got to now open up Paint or Photos and go into the directory and open that up. Then I got to, do my changes and save that. Then I got to go to an app and then upload it to that. With these tools, this streamlines things. Like you can just do Click to Do, copy something, send it right to Photos, do your edits. You don't even need to save it. You can then just hit copy and then send it to any program you want. Like it streamlines stuff. The ability for blurring the background works really well. This new feature that's coming where you can have 3 lights and you can move the lights around the subject and it's going to use AI to adjust the lighting is phenomenal. Well, we have this kind of in phones now, but that's a really great tool. Like these were pro level tools before, right? one I've always joked around about is the remove background feature, which I was never able to do because I don't use Photoshop. I don't have it installed, and I don't want it installed.
Yeah.
I hate Creative Cloud. But that required a little bit of skill to use. Now I literally click a button and it does it. I will say the biggest disappointment right now is in Microsoft Paint Co-Creator. But Co-Creator has so much potential. If they could get their image generator up to where ChatGPT is and OpenAI, it's going to be an amazing tool. So I'm really hoping they improve that. But all this stuff now is coming together. You need the NPU for it because it processes locally and barely, it doesn't hammer your CPU or GPU and kill your battery life. It also keeps things secure instead of setting it up to the cloud. But we're now starting to actually see like real world features and differences between these Copilot Plus PCs and non-Copilot Plus PCs. And it's becoming like this is what ticks me off is I'm sitting behind a Core i9 desktop PC with a 4080 GPU and 32 gigs of RAM, and I don't have any of these features.
Yep.
And
you never will.
Yeah. And meanwhile, what we were just talking about, the Surface Pro 12-inch has all of them. And they run really, really well. And Recall, I haven't used Recall a ton yet, but it is so good. You did a really nice job with it. The UI is awesome on it. And it's super fast and efficient. The new search is also really good with AI. So I like where all this stuff is going. I think it's just, it's really awesome. And just when that gap is going to continue to grow. And so we have some people asking in chat about older devices, like the NPU, quote unquote, that's in the Surface Laptop Studio. Is that going to get these features? I want to go with no. For one, they kind of want people to upgrade their PCs to this newer thing, but it's also it doesn't have the performance ability that these do. Even Intel chips have this problem, some of them. Intel's all over the map when it comes to NPUs, and that makes it really kind of hard, which is getting back to what I said before with the lower tier chips don't have this. NPUs and at least 40 tops is the new standard for Copilot Plus PCs, and Microsoft really wants to push it. And I think they're right to push it because this AI stuff is starting to get really interesting.
Yeah, I do feel sorry for the people who did buy a Surface Laptop Studio 2 because that was just off the cutoff point. That was announced, I think, the 6 months before the Copilot Plus PCs, and it was annoying as well because Microsoft did sell that laptop as an AI laptop. But AI laptop is not Copilot Plus PC. AI laptop is very different, and so. Yeah, the Surface Studio 2 does miss out on Surface Laptop Studio 2 does miss out on that because the NPU just isn't powerful enough. The minimum is 40 tops, right, or 45 tops for Copilot Plus eligibility, and the NPU in the Laptop Studio 2 I think is eight tops or maybe 12 tops. It's not very powerful. So yeah, that device unfortunately won't ever get it. And so unless Microsoft sort of moves from keeping it NPU exclusive and allows GPUs to tap into it, because that's what people want, right? People are saying, my GPU has 300 tops of AI power. Why can't Recall run on that? And Microsoft so far says, one, it's to do with energy efficiency, and two, we don't want these processes using up your GPU. We want them to be on this dedicated chip that's more energy efficient and leave your GPU available for other tasks. It's also they just want people to buy new PCs, and so that's why we're probably not going to see them move on from that.
Raphael mentions in comments that Microsoft added Copilot to the Microsoft Store. I'm assuming you mean the actual app, which is true. I guess I never.
Wasn't it always there?
Always in store?
I thought it was always in the store because it gets updated to the Microsoft Store. So.
Unless they're adding I think they may be adding Copilot.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah, so they did announce that they're also adding Copilot to the Microsoft Store app. What it really does is it just gives you an overview of the
insights.
Insights into the app you're looking at and stuff, and you can ask it questions. And what it would do is it would just take your question and put it in the Copilot app.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice addition there, but it's just another example of every team being forced to include Copilot in some way.
I'm okay with this. By the way, looking at Copilot in the store, it has a 4.6 rating from and 270 reviews and has 60,000 ratings.
That's not bad.
No, I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, people giving it 4.6. Like, that's fair, but people seem to like it. So
how do I see the review? Oh, yeah, there we are. Yeah, let's have a look. Most helpful.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Oh, actually, if you look at the 1-star reviews, they're all kind of crap reviews as well. Like, one of them just says, "I don't want it." Why are you reviewing it then? Just uninstall it.
Yeah, that's not surprising. Anyway.
All right, should we talk about the Qualcomm thing? I realized we skipped it on the to-do.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, real quickly, we'll try to cover this. Qualcomm has launched 3 new ads that should be appearing on TV. Although if you go to our article, you can also watch them there, or you can watch them on YouTube, which is where we link them. And so the thrust of these is that they're going after Intel, and specifically on and for behind the scenes, Qualcomm has been showing us this for a long time. That is, when I go to Qualcomm events and see their devices, they've been boasting about this for a while. They're just now converting it into a public-facing PR campaign, which is interesting for 2 reasons. One, that they're going after Intel, but also that they're doing a public campaign because a couple of weeks ago, I was at the gym, and it was ESPN, and I saw a Qualcomm Snapdragon X commercial come on. So this is them advertising their laptop chip, right? And I hadn't seen that before on TV. And we've seen Intel ads before, but it's interesting that Qualcomm is now starting to push the laptop advertising. And this is a new set of ads. So what they're going after Intel for, this is a little controversial. I think they're taking a little bit of liberties. They're technically not wrong, but let me explain. So they're saying, they're joking around about 55%. And the 55% is that an Intel laptop could cut CPU performance up to 55%. Technically not wrong. It is accurate. I forgot which laptop does that. I've seen some gaming laptops do this. I will say most Intel laptops don't do that. They may drop 5% or 10%, which is not that noticeable, but notable. AMD also has this as well. In fact, I wrote an article probably 4 years ago complaining about this. And Intel was actually better than AMD in regard to this. And I would still say Intel is better than AMD on this stuff, but they don't even mention AMD because in this space that Qualcomm is competing with, AMD is basically irrelevant. AMD is mostly in gaming laptops or super cheap laptops. But so the 55% thing is not completely accurate, at least for most Intel experiences. And I'm trying to be fair here, to Qualcomm's credit, though, their chips are straight up 100%. You're going to unplug it and get the exact same performance as plugged in. That is true. I think I've seen it maybe drop like 1%, but that is literally probably benchmark error. When you run benchmarks multiple times, you will get different results, right? It's not, you're not gonna get the same number every single time. But so they are right to boast that their chips will always perform the same on battery as they are on AC. And I think that's an important distinction. I just think they're using an extreme example here, but they are saying up to 55% to kind of cover themselves. So that's how the context, I would say. To Intel's defense, they don't set that, though. All Intel does is give laptop makers a lot of tools to customize the chip in TDP based on the thermal design requirements and battery life that they're going for. So it is the OEMs, when they build that laptop, like the one that has a 55% drop, that's because the OEM chose to do that, right? And if you see one where there's barely any drops, and I have seen Intel laptops that don't really have a performance difference, it's because the OEM chose that. Now, why are they doing this? Well, it's the same reason I criticized AMD for. It is because if you're a company, Lenovo, HP, I'm not calling anyone out specifically, but if you make a laptop and you put that number on 16 hours of battery life, but you're doing it by dropping the percentage, the that TDP down, so you're losing 20% of power, that that is being a little disingenuous, right? Now, you can question whether or not while you're on battery life, you're going to actually use all that power, all this kind of stuff, and that's kind of fair. I don't notice necessarily a big difference. I have noticed it on when I criticize AMD though. AMD chips, it was the CPU, the GPU, and even the SSD slowed down all in performance, and that was like a system wide. You did kind of feel that, right? The Intel ones, it's usually just the CPU might degrade a little bit, but they don't touch the SSD as far as what I've seen. So I do think, again, when this happens and OEMs choose to do this, and it is an Intel, it is being a little bit disingenuous when you're talking about battery life, right? Because they're throttling back the CPU, and Qualcomm is right to say they will never do that. And so that is a feather in the hat of Qualcomm. Qualcomm has also boasted before about their thermals, which is when running at max power compared, and they do this usually with the XPS 13 because there's literally an Intel version, a Qualcomm version, 1-to-1. You can compare them directly. They'll show the heat maps. Qualcomm one always runs cooler, and that's true too. So you're going to get less fan noise and stuff like that. So these are all reasons why I do prefer Qualcomm chips. And I think Qualcomm's right to sort of kind of brag about this stuff because it is a differentiator and it sets a nice bar. But I've also said that the Core Ultra Series 2 chips have done a really good job in terms of battery life. I've actually been really impressed with what they can do, and it's narrowed the gap between them and Qualcomm.
Hasn't Intel said that the Lunar Lake chips are a one-off though, and that they're not going to do a follow-up to that? I believe they have.
Yeah, their chips, like I said, are all over the map right now.
Yeah.
Some have NPUs, some don't. Some have like powerful NPUs, some don't. It's like, there's things like I think the Lunar Lake chip, you can't have a second internal display connected to it.
Yeah,
and the only reason why that's relevant is because of dual screen laptops.
Mm-hmm.
So the dual screen ones have to use, I forgot the Raptor Lake, I think, chip. They have to use that one, which isn't radically different, but they can use that one because that one does support multiple monitors.
Yeah.
So OEMs had to make weird choices when they're choosing chips for their laptops. It's
Lunar Lake also didn't work well with dedicated GPUs, right? I don't think there's any Lunar Lake laptop with a dedicated GPU, unless I'm mistaken.
Oh, that's a good one. I don't know that, but that might be true.
I think that is true, yeah, because that was one of the complaints people had is that, oh yeah, Lunar Lake's great, very energy efficient, very performant, but doesn't really support external or rather dedicated GPUs. And so I don't think, to my knowledge, there is not a single Lunar Lake laptop with also an NVIDIA GPU as an option, to my knowledge.
Yeah, Intel just needs to kind of find their way. They have a lot of good technology, and they're headed in the right direction, but again, Qualcomm is going to say that they have their Snapdragon X Plus, and X Elite chips, and within those, of course, there are various SKUs based on clock rate. And they'll say, they'll be correct, that their Snapdragon X, their cheapest, most affordable chip, has the same NPU as the Snapdragon Elite at 45 tops. And like AMD and Intel can't say that, right? Their NPU is literally based on the price of the chip. And so Qualcomm is definitely a lot more consistent on this stuff. And it's just going to get better. We've talked about the Gen 2 Snapdragon X stuff coming out I've heard a substantial jump in design and functionality.
Yeah.
We got to test it. We got to see efficiency, all that kind of stuff. But I'm hearing really good things about it. So we should expect a lot.
Awesome stuff. Right, let's move on to our next story. Xbox ROG Ally spotted at the FCC. So this is the Project Kennen device that I think Jez Corden exclusively reported on a few weeks ago. So this is expected to be the first Xbox ecosystem handheld. And what I mean by that is it's not an Xbox handheld. It's not a Microsoft Xbox handheld. It's an Asus handheld, but it's going to be marketed as an Xbox ecosystem device. So it will have an official Xbox branding on it, but it's not made by Microsoft. It's made by Asus, and you can tell that based on the images that have leaked with the FCC. It looks like an ROG Ally. There's no two ways about it. It looks like an Asus device. It doesn't look like an Xbox, really. It does have the ABXY buttons in the sort of traditional colors, Xbox colors, and it does also have an Xbox button, which I assume open up the Xbox guide or whatever interface they have when you press the Xbox button on the controller or Windows currently. And this is expected to be announced quite soon, I believe. I think perhaps even next month, June time. June's usually when Xbox makes big announcements. And if they were planning to kick off their whole Xbox ecosystem, I think next month would probably be a good place to do it. This device, I think, is expected to launch later this year. No idea on pricing yet, but it's probably going to be not cheap, given tariffs and whatnot. But this device is, Microsoft is expected to announce some big changes to Windows in preparation for this new Xbox ecosystem. They're trying to improve Windows on handhelds, and one of the ways they're going to do that is by building a dedicated gaming UI for Windows that runs on these handheld devices, likely on this ROG Xbox Ally thing. I think even this week, Tom Moran pointed out that the Xbox app now has a UI which allows it's designed for handhelds, and it even includes things like battery and Wi-Fi status, suggesting that this app will be the shell interface that runs on top of Windows when you do set it up on a gaming handheld. And so, this seems to be moving ahead. Asus is ready to launch this, but at this point, by the looks of things, and Microsoft is probably gearing up to announce big changes to Windows and Xbox. They even announced Gears of War Reloaded this week, and they said it's available on all sorts of platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, and Xbox PC, which could be the soft branding for this Xbox ecosystem. So in addition to the Xbox console, we'll have Xbox PC. The problem I'm going to have with these Xbox PCs is if they don't run Xbox console games, why are we calling them Xbox? The whole point of an Xbox is that it runs Xbox games. My Xbox Series X can run Xbox original games. It can run Xbox 360 games. It can run Xbox One games, and it can run Xbox Series games. If an Xbox PC can't run Xbox Original and Xbox 360 and Xbox One games, what are we doing? Like, it should be able to run all the same games my Xbox console can run. And so I'm going to be really interested to see if Microsoft is able to address that, or if they're not going to address it and just pretend it's not an issue. It is an issue, and that's going to be a real big sort of blow to the Xbox ecosystem if it doesn't work that way. But super excited to see this. It's now at the FCC, which means launch is getting near. I am surprised that. So, for those who don't know, the FCC is an interesting place. So, every device that you buy has to go through the FCC before it can go on sale, and that's just the law. But there are ways for companies to hide devices on the FCC. Like all of Microsoft services go through the FCC. The new services just announced went through the FCC a couple of weeks back. But you can ask the FCC to hide all the details, and so. It will only be a model number or something, but there won't be any images. Asus appears to have forgotten that because all of the testing images are just there. So they must have not realized that they can request the FCC hide all of the images and all of the information about the device until the device becomes available. But they've forgotten to do that here, which is quite interesting. Okay, lastly, Dan, Salesforce CEO, you wanted to talk about this briefly. He has some interesting things to say about Microsoft and Microsoft Teams and Slack.
Yeah, so Mark Benioff, Benioff, CEO, Salesforce, they bought Slack. He's been throwing dirt on Microsoft like every couple of weeks. I don't know if it's because he's asked about it or he just seems to volunteer. Like he has a weird fascination with Microsoft. He just can't stop talking about them. And I guess part of it is because they see, them as competition. But there was a recent interview with him. He says, you can see the horrible things that Microsoft did to Slack before we bought it. That was pretty bad. And they were running their playbook and did a lot of dark stuff. It's all gotten written up in an EU complaint that Slack made before we bought them. He doesn't mention what those things are. So I don't know what exactly he is referring to. Obviously, they were bundling Teams with Office 365. And we've even made that joke on here. The reason why a lot of IT departments use Teams is not because everybody loves Teams. It's because it was literally became a switch. If you were subscribing to Office, the big 365 thing for corporations, you literally could just throw a switch and deploy Teams for free. So, IT departments are always really financially constrained. I don't think I've ever met anyone in IT department that was like, oh yeah, we get all the hardware we want. And so that was seen as a little bit unfair, which yeah, it's unfair, or they're just playing to their advantages. Google is invested in Reddit, and now Reddit is suddenly the top referenced search results. It's like, is that fair? So like all these companies kind of do the same thing to a certain extent. He also says Microsoft, he doesn't think will be in OpenAI's future. You can see now Microsoft is really starting to run a separate playbook against OpenAI. I think that's now how Microsoft thinks. Microsoft is a company that wants to own it all, control it all. If they see a hot company or hot startup, they ask themselves, hey, why is that not in our world? I don't know if that's supposed to be a criticism or some deep insight, because I think that's obvious. It's been clear publicly that although they're friendly to each other, there was just a thing with Satya Nadella and the CEO there of OpenAI. So I think publicly they're friendly and all this, but there's clearly, and this isn't all Microsoft. It's clear OpenAI is distancing themselves from being tied to Microsoft because they're potentially so valuable at this point and have raised so much money that they see them releasing their own products. And don't forget, ChatGPT, we joked around, is a terrible name for a product. It's like literally the description of what it is, right? But it's been adopted now as the catch-all for generative AI. And that's, when we say ChatGPT, that's what people mean, right? So they have that going for them. They're clearly heading their own direction. They did recently break off with Microsoft. Microsoft was the exclusive cloud provider for OpenAI. That has now been undone. And they're still using Microsoft, but they're also now allowed to use other companies, which they were happy about because they said Microsoft wasn't able to meet their demand, which is really interesting and kind of scary. But Microsoft uses their stuff too, right? So, but it's also clear Microsoft is going off on their own, as they should. Why would they want to be permanently tied to OpenAI, a company they don't own or control, for something as critical as AI, which they're building into all their products and it's becoming a critical linchpin for both sales and functionality? Like, what happens if OpenAI goes, we're selling to Google? And what happens to Microsoft? Do they now have to try to license things from Google? And how's that going? Like, it's a mess, right? And there's no reason why Microsoft can't build their own LLMs, which is what they're doing. We've often said, Microsoft's been clear about this from the start, that although Copilot was using ChatGPT on the back end, it was only part of it. Microsoft had their own layer that went on top and their own rules and their own systems. And I think that's only continued to go. In fact, if you look at all the recent changes of Copilot, I can't remember the last time Microsoft has mentioned, oh, we're getting the latest ChatGPT version, da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Like, when was the last time that's happened, right? So they should be creating their own because, one, they get to control it completely, so they know what's going to happen to it. Two, they can shape it to the way they want it to be shaped, including meeting their own guidelines and all this kind of stuff. So I think this is obvious, and I don't see why it's like controversial at all. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I think in regards to what you were just saying there, OpenAI, Microsoft. Yeah, I think Microsoft not announcing new ChatGPT versions in Copilot is quite telling. And I think what Microsoft would rather is it silently replace all of the OpenAI tech with its own in-house tech, maybe without even announcing it, or maybe announcing it once the conversion's complete. And so, when Copilot's fully running on Microsoft's own tech, then they can be like, by the way, Copilot is no longer running on OpenAI stuff; it's using our own technology and whatnot. It will be interesting to see if Microsoft's able to compete head to head with OpenAI in that regard, because I think Mustafa Suleiman is on record stating that Microsoft's internal LLMs in house are about 6 months behind OpenAI. And so I'm wondering if they're trying to play catch up there, or if they're always going to be 6 months behind. Because if they are, then that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But if they're
This is
able
a good.
to match or even beat OpenAI at some point, that would be a big deal, especially considering how much more consumer-friendly Copilot is versus ChatGPT, as Dan mentioned. That is just a terrible name for an end-user product. And
Yeah.
it's why I laughed when Apple partnered with OpenAI on the Siri stuff on the iPhone, and they were talking about ChatGPT on iPhone and saying that. I just thought Apple must hate this because this is the most
Oh yeah.
anti-Apple branded thing in the whole world, and I love it.
Yeah, and the only reason Apple did that is because they were so
They had
far
no
behind
choice.
on
Yeah,
AI. They had no choice but to do that. And I'm sure they're working really hard on their own AI models, but I heard, what was the rumor, the statement that they're 2 years behind. That was Mark Gurman from Bloomberg, who is no slouch when it comes to reporting on Apple, said they were 2 years behind. But so once Apple gets to that point where they can break off with OpenAI, of course, they're going to absolutely do that. But yeah, these are the right decisions. That's a good point about Microsoft being behind too, and whether or not they can catch up or even surpass that. Interestingly enough, the more you do AI, the more AI becomes like able to build off itself, which is interesting. So that could really accelerate things. I just criticized with Microsoft saying that Co-Creator in Microsoft Paint is a brilliant idea and is potentially so powerful, but it is awful right now. Like, it is just like, if you ask it to, like, so if you don't know, for those who don't know what this feature is, it's like if you go into Paint, say you opened a drawing in Paint or you drew something in Paint, and you can bring up Co-Creator and it has a dialog box, and you're like, make this colorful or more realistic, and they give you like even presets like anime and pixel art and all this, and then there's a slider for creativity, which is like how much it's going to use the AI. And this all sounds really good, but it's like 9 times out of 10 the result is terrible. I mean, it's just like really bad. So but if they can improve that, because right now, the new image generator in ChatGPT is just off the chain. It's like really, really good. If they can get that level into Microsoft Paint, like, that's a game changer then. Like, then, because then you can just be taking all sorts of little graphics and photos and images and just using AI on the spot to like really create some amazing work. And that's going to be huge for a lot of people. But Microsoft is very behind on that stuff. So I'm hoping Co-Creator is so bad. I'm actually surprised it's shipped at this point. Like I said, conceptually, the idea is genius. I think it's great, but the functionality is just, it is just bad. So hopefully you can fix that. But okay, I think that'll about do it. That wraps it up for the Windows Central podcast. We do record this every Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern time, and you can see us on our YouTube channel, Windows Central, where we do have a live chat, as you probably noticed, where we take questions during the podcast, but we also will answer some questions at the end of the podcast, which we're not going to put here, but you can always go there and check it out. You can follow me. I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky and all that. You can just search for Daniel Rubino, and same for Zac Bowden. We do answer questions there as well. So please feel free to do that, or just go to windowscentral.com and check out our new comment system. We have a lot of interesting discussions going on our articles, especially on the new surfaces. So we appreciate that. But as always, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.
Awesome. So yes, if you have any questions, now's the time to drop them in the chat. We'll hang around and do our best to answer them. If there are no questions, then we will leave.
It's funny, the podcast, you mentioned like we were an hour on Surface Pro, but we still only went 90 minutes.
I know. we rushed through those last stories.
Hey, looks like the audio saved.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think there's a bug in the current version of Sound Recorder where it just doesn't show you the visual of the audio.
The waveform. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. If you're working at Microsoft and you know someone on the Sound Recorder team, I say Sound Recorder team as if there's a team building Sound Recorder.
It's one guy.
If you know the
Steve.
guy that has to update Sound Recorder, the one person, can you tell him that is, or them, that is broken? Thank you. What do you think of the story that Microsoft cancelled some leases and contracts for the construction of future AI server facilities? I don't have much thought on that. I think it could be two things, right? It could be Microsoft has overestimated how many servers they'd need, and actually they have as many as they already have, and they don't need many more. Or it could be, they are scaling back on it because they don't see many people using it. I don't know. It could be either one. I don't know. Is the Surface Laptop Studio line dead like the Laptop Go line? I don't know. What I will say is when there was a Laptop Studio 3 in development when Panos Panay was there, and it was supposed to ship, I want to say, at the end of it was supposed to ship at the end of this year, was the original plan. The problem is they what chip do they put in there? Because it's the Laptop Studio, it serves two purposes. It's the all-in-one laptop that has touch and pen input for creatives, and it's also the pro laptop, so it has a dedicated GPU. It needs an NVIDIA GPU essentially at minimum to justify its existence. So they can't put a Snapdragon X processor in there, at least not yet, because Snapdragon X doesn't support dedicated GPUs in the form of an NVIDIA GPU or Radeon, to my knowledge, AMD. So they would have to go with Intel. So they could, but what Intel would they go for? Because, as we mentioned, the Lunar Lake doesn't support dedicated GPUs, and Raptor Lake isn't a Copilot Plus chip. They could go with AMD. AMD's current Copilot chips are great. They're very powerful, and to my knowledge, they do support dedicated GPUs. But for whatever reason, for whatever reason, Microsoft Surface has been very averse to AMD ever since the Laptop 4 and 3. They were the only two Surfaces with AMD chips, and since then, we've not seen AMD in a Surface since. And I don't know what the reason for that is. So if we do see one at the end of this year, it will most likely be powered by an AMD chip because it's the only thing that supports both Copilot Plus and a dedicated GPU. That's assuming it hasn't been cancelled. The other thing I heard is the Laptop Studio 3 would have two sizes, 14 and 16 inch. But obviously with Panos leaving and the culling of the Surface portfolio, maybe the Laptop Studio was cut. I don't know if it was. No sources at the time told me it was. But, I think the Laptop Studio doesn't sell particularly well compared to the standard laptop and Pro. And if I'm honest, I would rather Microsoft, now that we have Snapdragon X, I would rather Microsoft go back to doing something more like a Surface Book, where it's a full laptop that detaches the screen. Because now they can do that because the chip lives behind the screen, and Snapdragon X can actually live there and be great, versus the Intel chips before, which throttled like nobody's business. Or just do a laptop Pro. Just I don't really know if we need to do this whole weird, 2-in-1 laptop thing where the screen comes forward. It's very convoluted. And the Laptop Studio 2 is a beefy, heavy, thick laptop. It's not a it's not a MacBook Pro in any stretch of the imagination when it comes to form factor. It's so much thicker and so much heavier.
Two questions. Chris is asking, hey, Daniel, good show. I tried asking on Threads. Sorry. Yeah, I haven't been that active on Threads. That one gives me a little bit of issues sometimes, but I'll try to use it a little bit more. You were asking about the supplement drink I have talked about on previous show. Are you still taking it? What is it? And does it work? Good question. I don't know what you're referring to, unfortunately. If you could give me a little bit more details on it, love to answer, because I don't know what supplement drink I'm taking right now. Off the top of my head, I'm not taking any supplement drinks. I do take a lot of pills, a lot of amino acids and stuff like that, but that's maybe a little bit different. So if you can give me some more info, I'll try to answer it. The other question was, is Teams, I forgot the exact question, is like Teams the number one app in that category? I don't know if they have to be number one. I could just tell you this, that at least quickly looking up some numbers, in at least 2024, Microsoft apparently had 320 million what I think are monthly active users, where Slack is estimated in 2025 to have 65 million. So they're not even close. We're talking about 4 to 5 times as many users for Teams compared to Slack. So,
what OS is the Xbox ecosystem ROG handheld running? It runs Windows. It'll be Windows 11. It'll be Windows 11 with some gaming UI on top. Do you think there are any upcoming Windows features after the new Snapdragon chips will be gated to those only? I would be surprised, to be honest. I don't know. I can't. No, I don't think so. I think the NPUs in the current Copilot Plus PCs will be the baseline for a while. I think all Copilot Plus features will target top and 40 plus tops for a while. Yeah, I can't imagine there'll be stuff exclusive to Snapdragon X2 and next gen AMD and Intel Copilot chips. I can't imagine.
That drink, which I haven't ordered in a while, but it is really good, is called a Magic Mind. It's these like little shots, and you can mix it into you can just shoot it down, or you can mix it into other things. But yeah, Magic Mind. If you search for it, you'll get to their website. Yeah, I should probably order more of
that. Someone was saying, where was it? I missed. I've lost it now. Of course, I have. Any news on the next gen Snapdragon X chips and new Surface devices with it? Nothing that we haven't already talked about. We are expecting Snapdragon X2 to be announced in September, with the first devices shipping as soon as October, ideally. That could include the Surface Pro 12 and Surface Laptop 8. Not too sure what new changes will be there on those devices. Obviously, it's probably likely that the next gen Pro will sort of adopt a similar design to the Pro 12-inch that just launched. But the laptop, I think we're going to be sticking with that design for a number of years to come. That only just got updated, and I think that there's not much more to improve upon it. So the laptop 8, I don't think will be much different externally, but the Pro 12 might be if it's following a similar trend to the Pro 12-inch, which is very confusing. The Pro 12 and the Pro 12-inch, two different devices.
Abdullah asked about the 5G version for Surface Pro 12. If you go back into the podcast at some point, we did have a pretty extensive discussion about that. My thought is, well, officially, no, there's none coming. Unofficially, I don't think there is going to be one coming. Maybe with a Gen 2. I think they're going to wait to see how sales go with this device and feedback, and if there's requested demand for it. I did mention that it is difficult to implement 5G in these devices, in that you need to design from the ground up the entire chassis and the boards and all that to support 5G. And you have to do that. And then from there, you backtrack by removing the 5G stuff for the non-5G laptops. To go from a non-5G design to 5G, though, is like impossible. You just can't do that. So I don't think they have a 5G version coming. Usually when they do, as Zach has criticized in the past, it's like 2 or 3 months later, but they always announce that they have a 5G version coming. They didn't this time, so I'm very doubtful they're going to have one. So I think you're going to need to wait a year at least.
Surface Book had one of the best keyboards in a Windows machine. Fully agree. Even the current today's Surfaces, even the Laptop Studio doesn't match it. They get close, don't get me wrong, but there was just something amazing about the Surface.
I think it's because you could have more travel.
Yeah, and I think the chassis was so rigid that there was barely any keyboard flex, and it was a beauty to type on. I miss that Surface Book keyboard.
I love typing on the Surface laptop though.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. It's not a bad keyboard. The Surface Laptop's keyboard is amazing, but I think the pinnacle, if I had to rank them, I think the Surface Book 15 inches keyboard is at the very top.
I just wish they had the Alcantara.
Get over it, Dan. Alcantara's dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, your camera has frozen for some reason.
Oh, that again? I'm going to have to unplug my monitor. Hold on.
Your monitor? Yeah, his whole setup's crazy.
Yeah, this webcam is built in.
Yeah.
It's one of the best web cameras I've ever used.
Except for when it doesn't work.
Yeah, every while. And
I think Dan's audio is now cut out as well. Right. Any more questions? If you have any questions, please do put them in the chat. If there are no more questions, then that will be the end of the show. What did you replace Skype with for this podcast? We're using a service called Social Live, which is fantastic. I recommend everyone go and check it out. It is a brilliant piece of software that we have had great fun using. I'm still getting used to it. It's still a little bit of a learning curve, especially. I mean, not in a bad way, but it's just not Skype. Skype was so basic, and this has a lot more like production features that make creating a live stream easier. I do want to shout out Chris Winger once again, who gave us access to this because we'd be screwed otherwise. So thank you, Chris. Very, very kind of you. Did Dan would come back? There he is. Would you recommend the XPS 13 Snapdragon version today? They are on sale. I think that's a good laptop.
Oh yeah.
The only thing that I didn't like about the one that I reviewed is that it only had a 1080p screen.
Yeah, my best friend has the OLED version. It's pretty awesome
Yeah.
looking. He likes it a lot. What do you think of the overall direction? Did you answer that one?
Oh, no, I didn't. What do you think of the overall direction of Surface hardware is heading, trying to be profitable and all? It's interesting because the fanboy in me is sad that Surface is no longer this bombastic, experimental product line of weird and unique hardware. You know, I loved the Surface Duo. I loved the idea of the Surface Neo. I loved the Surface Book. I loved the Surface headphones, the earbuds. I loved all of it. But it clearly didn't resonate with with the wider market. They didn't sell many of any of that. And so, Microsoft in the last couple of years has very much it wants everyone to be making money. Like they don't want to have to support some team who keeps failing to make a successful product. And so what we're seeing is Microsoft focus on the stuff that works for them in regards to Surface, and that is the Pro and laptop. And in the last 12 months, we've seen them update the Pro and laptop like 400 times. Like they're going to just keep focusing on this. And so it is a bit boring. Don't get me wrong. I do think the new the Pro 12-inch is a cool device, but let's be real. It's not something it's not anything we haven't seen before. It's not a radical new form factor or trying to push a create a new market. It's very much just revision upon what we already know. And that is boring. But if it means Surface can stick around, then I'm all for it, because I would hate to see Surface go away. If Microsoft just cancelled Surface and said, right, we're done, we're no longer going to make PCs, we'll leave it up to our OEMs, I would be really sad about that, because I do think Surface, even as the Pro and laptop, I think they are the pinnacle of Windows PCs. I think they do set the bar, they do set the narrative, and you can't find a laptop like the Surface laptop. Lenovo, Dell, HP, they've all got their own takes on the laptop. But the Surface laptop is the only one of its kind that is the way that it is in regards to
the
how
minimalist dream.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Backing up what Zach said, I'm the same way, right? I love the Duo. I love the experimental stuff. I love the creativity. Loved watching Panos on stage. Like you genuinely got excited for hardware, and it was like, that was great. To play devil's advocate, though, the only successful lines that they've had is Surface Pro and Surface Laptop.
Yeah.
Studio failed. Laptop Studio, questionable. I don't think, and I've said I'm pretty confident that Laptop Studio 1 and 2 probably didn't sell well, because I did not see a lot of people talking about that device, even though I thought it was pretty great. Surface Book, we know where that went.
Yeah.
Duo. Someone asking earlier why there was not a Duo 3, because no one bought Duo 1 and 2, and the ones that did hated it. And it had some bugs. we loved it, and then we thought it was going the right direction. And a 3, I think, would have been, especially if they had gone with a single screen foldable, would have changed things. But yeah, so Duo is a failure. Neo never got off the ground, and I said it before. I think Neo would have failed had it come out. I really do believe that,
especially with 10x.
Yeah, I think it would have been fun to play with. I think it would have been interesting, but I don't think it would have been successful. So, like, what else am I missing? If you want, then you have like Microsoft Band, if you want to consider that, even though it's technically not Surface, but it was Surface adjacent. That failed. What else? Is anything else I'm missing? The accessories. Oh, headphones.
Yeah, headphones and earbuds. I do miss them.
Yep. They were cool, but again, market failures, unfortunately. And they did have quality control issues, right? The big thing I know with the headphones was they would fall apart sometimes on people, after many months.
Yep.
Basically everything that they did try outside the box is gone and failed. And it's not because Satya Nadella was like, those are too cool, or, like they were killed because they just didn't sell well. And I give all the credit in the world to Microsoft for trying and being creative. But when it came down to it, Surface Pro, which they defined that device, and basically only works for them.
Yeah.
I just mentioned ThinkPad they have one. HP had tried a couple times with some really good devices, but they didn't catch on. It was just Microsoft nailed that category and filled the niche of that category to the brim that no other maker seems to have a chance to compete with them there. And then you have Surface Laptop, which we all questioned when it came out, like, why are you making a laptop? It's so boring. But laptop became one of their top selling devices. And so, that's how Microsoft sees it. And I don't think they're I think they're totally right on that.
So are either of you going to build? See you there? Question mark. No, I don't believe so. Microsoft didn't even invite me this year, so. So yeah.
All we need now are at least some AMD powered Surface laptops. So this comes down to a simple thing of when Microsoft is building these devices, they're neutral when it comes to the processor, and they build the devices with the processors. Well, even before that, they'll look at pricing and feature sets of these chips, and do they match with what they want to go with, right? So they got to do that. So say it's got to have a certain NPU in it and certain processing power and promised battery life. Then they'll build prototypes around those, and then they'll test them out and stuff like that. And when it ends up sticking around is the one that gives them probably the best profit, as well as the performance goals that they were going for. And as I mentioned earlier, something like Surface Pro 12-inch is, as far as I can think, is literally impossible with Intel and AMD's chip lineups right now. So will we see AMD return? It's definitely possible. If you don't, it's because they're not good enough, the chips for Microsoft's intentions. And that's what it comes down to,
I will say that AMD's current Copilot Plus chips are incredible. They benchmark really well.
Yeah.
I think maybe I can't even remember. I think they're actually quite good on battery life as well. I think they've reviewed really well. And so, like I said, if they do a Surface Laptop Studio 3 this year, I wouldn't be surprised if it is powered by an AMD chip, because they're not bad, their current Copilot Plus offerings.
I've talked about previously this, and some of this doesn't apply to Surface. Like we mentioned about how on another podcast, Surface devices don't make use of the human presence detection feature set, which is available on Intel and Qualcomm devices, but has never been available on an AMD device because I don't think their chips support it.
Right.
AMD devices also don't support 5G. So, if they're going to build a Surface laptop, and I don't want to say necessarily like it's impossible for AMD chips not to support 5G. It's just that if you're going to go x86, a lot of times you go with an Intel modem, but there are other modems out there too. But for some reason, I've almost never seen, I don't think, an AMD laptop with 5G. It's just, you also rarely see AMD laptops with higher resolution displays. Again, not saying it's impossible, but I think there are certain limitations about these chips. It's one reason I've always boasted Intel and Qualcomm, is because it's not necessarily just the performance and battery life. it's all these extra little features that you can get, like human presence detection, IR support, 5G support. Um, even Intel's Aura edition, where they work with Lenovo super closely to optimize things and deliver some unique features. Or you have the Evo certification, which is a set of standards Intel has set to make sure that everything from when you open the lid of the device, how long it takes the display to come on and for the user to be into Windows again, standby battery life, overall battery life. That's Evo has a ton of standards. And so when you get that, and all Surface devices with Intel are Evo certified, but they don't put the badge on there. But AMD doesn't have that kind of program. So we'll see.
Okay, final call for any questions. If there are none, then it's time we said goodbye.
Windows is too heavy to run on phone and Surface Duo. Someone's asking about this. Yeah, I mean, that's totally right. Microsoft has for years has been trying to make a lighter version of Windows, but has never been able to follow through with it. But you're never going to see. We're very confident you'll never see Microsoft return to the phone business again.
Yeah, I think that's such a shame as well, because there's no reason why a Surface phone with Android can't work. Just a normal phone with Android with Microsoft Launcher and Copilot and all this other stuff. Microsoft's a custom version of Android that, just like One UI, but Microsoft's own take on that. There's no reason why that can't work. Microsoft just doesn't want to invest in that because it takes. I think Microsoft didn't realize how much work it actually takes to build an Android device, because obviously they've got the hardware team and they could do that all in-house, but then actually supporting the device once it's out there with OS features and Android updates and all this other stuff was a lot of work for them. And I just don't think they wanted to invest in the team, and that's why even though Microsoft Launcher, although you can still download it and use it, has been on life support for, I want to say, 2 years now. It hasn't received a single real new feature, and that's because Microsoft doesn't want to invest in Android teams. They just, Android.
They had repivoted for a while, right? They created a whole group for Android that was multifaceted.
I believe was driven by Surface. Surface obviously wanted to do the Duo, and so 2019, 2020, we saw Microsoft really adapt to Android and really push and become proud of Android. And the version of Android on the Surface Duo I thought was really nice, like especially with 12L. The 12L version of Android on Surface Duo was, I think, it looked great. It was very fluid. I think it had a nice set of features, and it's just a shame that they couldn't. Like I said, I would be happy for them to scrap the Duo and just go do a single screen phone with that sort of Android version that they built and just keep updating that. I would love them to do that, but like I said, they just don't want to support the team. They didn't want to invest anymore in that, and I think that's a real shame.
They really should have, and this was going to be a little bit more difficult because they don't control Android completely. And if they went with the non-Google version, no one would want that either. But they're doing this kind of right now. But the idea of like making Android work even closely more with Windows, if they could have made their phone uniquely paired with Windows 11 for specific features, that would have been cool. But I don't think there's anything that they could have done there that then Samsung or any other company couldn't do as well if they just, because it would be, everybody would have the same access to the same tools. Before we go, just quickly, someone's asking about, when I was talking about the failures for Surface, was it pricing or design? I don't think it was pricing. The Surface Pros have never, we talked about earlier, right? Surface Pro has always been criticizing for price. Surface Laptop was criticized for price. Could they have been cheaper? Sure. But I think it was just the market. I think people just didn't want them. They didn't want the design.
Like when the Duo 2 went down to $999, that didn't save it. And but for $999, the Duo 2 was a great deal. I thought, two screens, OLED, 90 hertz, plus all the other awesome stuff the Duo 2 was doing for $1,000 for the same price as a normal iPhone Pro. Like, come on, that's a great deal. And nobody bought it. So
and this is super important to remark about Surface devices. They use a lot of custom hardware. The displays are almost always custom made.
Yep.
So this is why you see sort of a lot of similarity sometimes between OEMs and like the 14-inch range, is because they're all sourcing the same Samsung or LG display. Whatever those companies are offering that year, they pick and choose, and then they kind of build the devices around that kind of stuff. Microsoft has always customized their displays. Remember, they were the first to have 3x2 on the market, and they had to have those custom made. Now 3x2 is a lot more widely adopted, but something like the displays on Surface Duo were insanely thin, and then they have this wiring and these chips. Like a lot of these devices are custom built, and that drives up pricing because you're requiring manufacturing but in smaller numbers for a very specific thing. So that does drive up the price, and that's another reason why Surface devices are more expensive, because they're like boutique, right? They're specially created for these functions.
And when
And
it
that's a
came to
big
devices
difference.
like the Duo, think about how they had to thread the wires through the hinges
Right.
and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Incredible detail and like precision needed. I actually think Duos had to be hand built, right? I don't know if they were fully machine built.
I don't know, but I
think
mean,
there
it
was
was incredible technology. At the
yeah.
time, it was the world's thinnest LCD display.
Oh, and the Neo, yeah, that's right. Yeah, the Neo had the thinnest, and then the Duo had OLEDs, which were just incredible.
Yeah.
I really did like that size, like even like in single screen mode. I love how wide these screens are. I think they're really
Yeah.
nice, and it's so easy to type on, and it's like it's not one handable width wise, but it's one handable height wise. So you can still get to the top and pull down the notification shade and stuff. They got a lot right with the Duo. They got a lot wrong. Don't get me wrong, but they nailed some things, and I think the screen shape and size was one of them.
Earth Torch just quickly says that most consumers aren't that tech savvy to understand how much custom work is required. Yeah, no, I agree 100%.
Yeah,
that's forgivable. What's not forgivable is the fact that most tech reviewers in this space don't understand it. And that's embarrassing, because
Yeah.
they should. A lot of these tech reviewers don't go deeper into talking to the engineers and understanding how this stuff works. The same reason why a lot of reviewers are bad at understanding business devices and business laptops and why they are the way they are. And I hear this all the time from OEMs behind the scenes. They give us credit all the time. They're like, no, you guys actually know and understand how these markets work. They're like some big sites, they don't even bother to try to, and then they'll criticize a ThinkPad because it's 1080p
It's not a
display.
MacBook Air.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, because it's not a MacBook Air. So I think it's an important distinction that really ticks me off with a lot of tech reviewers who I find pretty superficial in their analysis and don't even mention this stuff, right? So, but yeah, good points.
All right,
I know Zach wants to go. It's Thursday night for him.
We've got to call it there. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back next week. Follow us on Twitter. We keep you updated and when we go live. But until then, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.